I wanted to go over a bunch of the features that I look for that I think is most important when I'm doing an AR-15 build. And I also wanted to cover what the differences are between different bolt carrier groups and how you can kind of choose the best one for your budget and for your AR-15 build. And so I have a little bit of an assortment here from left to right. They basically go from most basic to more advanced, and we're going to go over different features. And more importantly, whenever I'm starting an AR-15 build, I build the gun around the bolt carrier group and the barrel. We're gonna make a separate video about choosing barrels. Also, if you see anything in this video that you might wanna pick up, just check the very first link in the description if you're on YouTube. First thing I wanted to kind of talk about is there are a boat ton of bolt carrier groups out there, kind of like Glock barrels. And if you didn't see my video on aftermarket Glock barrels, I'll put a link below for that. But basically, most of these bolt carrier groups are made by 2 or 3 manufacturers, and some of them are made in-house. The only ones that we know of for sure that are made in-house are the ones where it's stated on the website. You know, and because a lot of companies have non-disclosure agreements, it's almost impossible to tell, you know, who's making what products and things of that nature. But that's honestly not the most important thing. It doesn't matter if they're all made by 1 or 2 companies. I know of at least 2 companies that manufacture bolt carrier groups, and one of them is Aero Precision. I know that they make quality bolt carrier groups, so that's pretty cool. So on the far left here, this is going to be our most basic one. Let's start with that one first. Now, most bolts and bolt carriers are going to be made out of 2 different types of steel. Typically, the carrier, which is this one here, is made out of an 8620 steel, and then typically, for mil-spec purposes, the bolt is made out of Carpenter 158 steel. And then this one's from Stag Arms. So that's something that's interesting, is you want to look at the steel that it's made out of, not so much on the carrier, more so on this bolt right here. Now, at the Stag Arms website, they actually don't state what this bolt is made out of. They say that the carrier is made of 8620 steel, but they don't talk about what the bolt is made out of, which is a super important part of a decision process. I will say I don't have a ton of rounds through this. This one came with a Stag Arms build kit that I purchased. You know, I probably have about 500 rounds through this. Not very much, but at the same time, I would kind of like to know what kind of steel it's made out of, but they don't talk about that. Now, moving further down the spectrum here, this one is made out of a S7 tool steel. This is probably the strongest bolt carrier group that we have in this lineup. The entire carrier unit, as well as the bolt itself, is made out of S7 tool steel. I can't remember what the percentage is, but it is, I can't remember if it's like 50% stronger, but I can tell you it is definitely the strongest of the steels that we have in front of us today. Moving on down here, this one is going to be an Aero Precision bolt carrier group. Same thing here, you know, we got the 8620 carrier, but this bolt is actually made out of a 9310 tool steel. And the difference between 9310 and Carpenter 158 is 9310 is not mil-spec. However, 9310 theoretically is 7% stronger than Carpenter 158 steel. So that's just something to keep in mind. If you see 9310, it's pretty good steel. Now moving on to these 2 right here, this one is the Fail Zero bolt carrier group, and this one is the Lantac Enhanced bolt carrier group. Both of these, 8620 steel on the carrier, Carpenter 158 steel on the bolt itself. So now that we've talked about, you know, what they're made out of, let's just kind of run through it one real quick time. Of the bolt carrier groups, Carpenter 158 steel is your mil-spec steel. 9310 is 7% stronger than Carpenter 158. And then the S7 tool steel, I don't remember what the percentage is. I tried looking it up. I don't remember what it is. I did a review on the Sharps Rifle Company bolt carrier group about a year ago, and I think I stated what the percentage was back then, but I can just tell you it's significantly stronger than any of the others. So just keep a heads up on that. But honestly, I haven't had issues with any of them. Even this unknown steel for this bolt here, I would actually suggest that Stag Arms list what your bolt is. They tell us what the carrier is, but not the bolt. That's kind of important to know. But regardless if you choose Carpenter 158 from these, 9310 from this, or S7 tool steel, I just haven't had any issues. Maybe I just got lucky. I don't know. So moving on, let's talk about another thing that I look at. Is it an M16 bolt carrier group, or is it an AR-15 bolt carrier group? Now, I don't have an AR-15 quote-unquote bolt carrier group here to show you. All of these are M16 bolt carrier groups, and all that means, guys, is the back here, see how far up this metal piece comes here? On the AR-15s, it only comes to about right here, and then it's cut there. So it's a little bit lighter. Most people go with M16 bolt carrier groups just because they tend to be more robust, especially for rapid fire. So you want to check, is it an AR-15 or an M16? All of these are M16. The only difference is this portion here will be cut further back on an AR-15 bolt carrier group. So we covered materials, talked about AR-15 versus M16 bolt carrier groups. Now let's talk about the coatings. So this is our standard Parkerized finish right here. This is your mil-spec finish. It's nothing fancy. It's not very slippery. And that has to do with what we call our friction coefficient. And the lower that number, the more slippery it is, the less likely it is to experience heat and heat-related stress. And it's also gonna reciprocate easier in your upper receiver with less lubrication. So this is your standard run-of-the-mill Parkerized ones. Nothing special about those. Over here, these are all nickel boron. Now, nickel boron is just a coating they put on there. It looks like it's chrome, but it's not. It is a coating that gets impregnated into the steel. It's not just a surface coating that can be scratched off, but it is one of the most slippery coatings that I've ever tried. It also has the lowest friction coefficient of a lot of these other bolt carrier groups. They are the easiest to clean because they're so slippery. You can typically just take a rag, a microfiber towel, and just wipe them off. And I'll show you what I mean here in a second. This one, I believe a DLC coating, which stands for diamond-like coating. So I don't remember if nickel boron or the DLC is stronger. I'm assuming DLC is, but you guys can correct me if I'm wrong down in the comments below. But the main thing to know here is that the nickel boron, at least to the touch, feels more slippery, but it's very hard to tell the difference. Honestly, it doesn't really matter which coating you guys get. Just keep in mind that if you get the standard, it's gonna experience more heat and you're gonna need more lubrication for your AR-15. And if it does experience more heat, it could experience more stress and then reduce the lifespan of your bolt. The next thing that I look for is high pressure testing and magnetic particle inspection. Just keep in mind though, high pressure testing and magnetic particle inspecting doesn't guarantee your bolt won't break. It just means, at the moment of testing, these bolts passed. Now, some companies don't worry about that. Some companies do. It's just, it doesn't really cost much more, for a bolt carrier that is high pressure tested and magnetic particle inspected than it does for one that isn't. So I always go with the one that is. Now, to high pressure testing, they always test it mainly up here on the bolt, not so much on the carrier. They will probably magnetic particle inspect the carrier, but they won't high pressure test it. The magnetic particle inspecting is a process they use to look for surface cracks or any imperfections that the human eye can't detect. And then the high pressure testing is to make sure that these can handle the explosive forces of a round going off. I'm not going to go into the details because I don't really 100% understand it, but I do know that it is something that I think is very important when choosing a bolt carrier group. Now, the next thing that I look for, and this really isn't something that you can really look for until it actually arrives, and that is proper staking of your gas tube. So right here, for those who are new, this is the gas tube of your AR-15, and the gases from your gas line come back into here, and that's what makes this bolt reciprocate. Now, a long time ago, before I started YouTube, I helped a friend build an AR-15 when I built my very first AR-15. And I remember we couldn't get his to cycle for crap. I think he bought one of those complete DPMS uppers, and it came with a DPMS bolt carrier group. We couldn't figure out why it wouldn't cycle, and then I didn't get a chance to shoot it for a long time. Keep in mind, this was my very first real experiences with AR-15s. One day, I was like, hey, let me take a look at it. I think I can fix it. So I took his upper apart before I was about to go shoot it, and I was cleaning the bolt carrier, and then I noticed this was very loose. And what was happening was the gases were going into here, and then they were escaping where it meets the carrier. And what was funny was it was staked, kind of like this one is, but it wasn't staked well enough. Both of the screws backed out on it. So what do we mean when we talk about properly staked? Well, when we talk about properly staked, if you look right here at these little indentations next to the bolts here, they basically will stake it, pushing material in and hopefully interfering with this bolt so it won't back out. And from what I can see, it doesn't look like this one is properly staked. It looks like maybe a little bit like on this side, but it looks like this one could back out pretty easily. Now, like I said, I don't have a whole lot of rounds through that, so that's something I am gonna check out. If you do find that yours isn't properly staked, there is a special tool that you can get. I will put a link below for it, And what it does is it just holds your bolt. It will stake it perfectly for you. So you don't got to worry about taking a hammer and a punch and all that stuff and messing it up. But I will put a link for that tool, but this one looks like it's going to need it. So I'll probably order that tool for myself and we'll correctly stake that one. So let's look at some examples that are properly staked. I will say of these, this one looks like it's probably the best, has the best staking on it. This one's the Aero Precision, and you can very much see the staking marks 100% interfere with that Allen head right there. They go into the metal, and that will prevent it from backing out on us. And that's the Aero Precision one. Let's look at the Fail Zero. The Fail Zero one's looking pretty good, but it's not quite as good as the Aero Precision, especially like right here. It's not really staked all that well. Let me get this light out of the way. So if you get up here close to it, it's hard to tell if this one is really properly staked or not, but this side looks like it's a little weak. This side's a little bit better, and then this side looks like it's pretty good. It's starting to interfere with this bolt, but still, that side kind of has me concerned. Let's take a look at the land tack. So this one is definitely properly staked all the way around. You can see that it definitely pushes in and interferes with the Allen head on all four sides. So that one's good to go. Let's take a look at this one. This is our Sharps XPB bolt carrier group. This is probably the toughest one here. This one is properly staked as well. You can definitely see that it's staked enough to interfere with all of these bolts right here on all four sides. Make sure you get it properly staked. The main thing you want to do is order from a company that offers a return policy. That way, if you do receive one that isn't properly staked, you can get it, returned or exchanged and not have any issues to worry about. Proper gas key staking will definitely mess with your cycling if those bolts start backing out. Now let's talk about special features amongst bolt carrier groups. So these three don't really have any special features. Aside from the materials that they're made out of and the coatings, they're all designed pretty much the same. These two, on the other hand, are a little bit different. On the land tack here, you can see there's a lot of stuff that's different from, let's just say, a more standard one. You can tell that there's a lot of relief cuts back here. You can also tell up here on the front that there's kind of more squared off. You kind of have a little relief cut right here that you don't have on this one. And then you can also tell that they have different cam pins. So this one is the Land Tack Enhanced, and this one is the Aero Precision. This cam pin is a little bit different. We're gonna talk about that a little bit. So this cam pin is what Land Tack is. They have a patent on this. It's their rounded cam pin on the head here. And the theory behind it is it's made out of a stronger materials. And because these can break, because when your bolt is reciprocating, it's doing this, and that puts stress on your cam pin. The other claim that they make about this is it creates less wear in your upper receiver. And I can't tell you if that's a legit statement or not. I'd have to look at some of my uppers and see. But basically it makes sense in theory. This one has an edge to it, this one doesn't. This one should reciprocate smoother and not put any wear in your upper receiver as much. That's kind of what their thing is about that. Now, as far as a lot of these cuts on it, this cut here is to help with overpressured guns. It doesn't 100% alleviate it. This is what it says on their website. But this little port on this side right here, this helps extra gas escape if you have an overpressured gun, especially if you're running a suppressed gun. So that's another thing you got to think about when you're running suppressors is you're going to have a lot more back pressure. Back here, these cuts around in here, these are lightning cuts. And then right up here, these are lightning cuts as well. And that helps reduce the amount of friction in the upper receiver. So for example, with these, because they're perfectly rounded, they're gonna hug the inside of your upper, but the whole surface will be rubbed. Whereas this one, because they have it cut at angles here, you got less surface contact points. They also wanna make it more balanced. A balanced bolt carrier group adds is you get less rocking when it reciprocates. Now we can't see this even in slow motion. I don't know what type of imaging software you would need to actually visualize this, but basically when our bolt carrier groups reciprocate, they tilt just a little bit. And that creates a little bit of extra wear on the bottom, a little bit of extra wear on the top. Also, when it's coming back and this bolt's meeting the chamber, it could put a little bit of chipping on your lugs right up here. So that's kind of the reason why a lot of companies are trying to create balanced bolt carrier groups. Now they're claiming that this one is balanced, but like I said, I haven't had any issues with any of them. So I can't really attest to whether or not it actually made a big significant difference or not. Now looking at the Sharps Rifle Company, this one probably has the most advanced features of all of these. But basically they got a ton of lightning cuts in the back here. Also it's got a little bit cut off the bottom here and around for more lightning. They got a more squared off look on this to reduce friction. And then it's more balanced, like I said, like I was talking about with the Landtac, to reduce any type of rocking during cycling. Also, what's very interesting about this one is the bolt itself. You'll notice that all of these other bolt carrier groups that are down here, they all have standard lugs on the bolt. What do I mean by that? Well, this bolt has squared lugs. And if you ever look at the inside of your chamber, when this bolt's coming home, if they don't meet up perfectly, your chamber on your barrel could actually put stress onto the edges of these and cause some of them to break off. Then you wouldn't get solid lockup. Sharps Rifle Company said, well, what if we just angle them backwards? And what that does is it just adds and improves any reliability. Not that I've ever had any reliability issues with any of them, but this is made like that so that it will lock into the chamber more smoothly and less likely for your lugs to break off. I say all that to say this, guys, you kind of have to adjust your build based around what your needs are. You know, if your goal is to build the most reliable AR-15 ever, then hey, you know, get one of the higher end bolts. The most expensive one of this entire group is definitely the Landtac. These are around $280-ish, I think. This one's around the $200 mark, just depending on where you get it. I have seen them for less. Sharps actually makes their stuff very fairly priced. You know, big shout out to them for that. You know, the next one in the price list is definitely the Aero Precision bolt carrier group. This one is their nickel boron. Works great. This one probably has the most rounds of all of these. This was on my very first AR pistol build that we did about 1.5 years, almost 2 years ago now. I don't know how many thousands of rounds I have through it, but it looks brand spanking new and they're super easy to clean. But we're gonna talk about cleaning here in a second. And then next up on the list is the Fail Zero. These are a little bit more affordable. It really just depends on where you pick all this stuff up, but these are around the $160 mark. And then you have this one from Stag Arms. Like I said, this is a basic one. These are around $100. Now there are some other ones that I want to try. Definitely want to try the ones from Fax and Firearms. That one, hopefully we'll be able to test one of those in the future. And I want to try out some of the new Brownells ones. If you haven't seen the new Brownells bolt carrier groups, I can't like 100% recommend them because I haven't tried them, but I'll put a link below so you can go check those out because they got some badass looking bolts for like amazing prices. And I believe they're all high pressure tested, magnetic particle inspected, and they use all the correct steels and stuff. Let's talk about cleaning real quick. I don't ever use CLP. I use oil and solvent separately. This is Shooter Lube. I've been using it for a little over 1 year now. Almost 2 years, and it's non-toxic. It has zero odor to it. Like when I'm cleaning my guns, I can't tell that there's any cleaner being used. You could get this on plastic, you can get it on your hand, just you could pretty much eat it because it's non-toxic. The next part that I use is the Otis bone cleaning tool. Now, if you haven't seen this, let me show you this real quick. We'll just pull this one apart. So this little tool here, on the back here of your bolt, you got your little key back here. It'll go into here, and you could turn it like that and get all the carbon off. That's a hard spot. I mean, you can even see on there right now, there's a lot of carbon buildup on it. And you just turn it and it helps really get all the carbon off. It's best to soak it in the solvent first, let it sit and then use this. Also, what's cool about it is it will reach way down into here and clean back in here, way back here where you can't reach. You just turn it and then it starts getting all that carbon out for you. So that's huge, man. Like that really helps out. These aren't super expensive, but I'll put links below for everything. But also down here on your firing pin, this is usually one of the most stubborn spots right here. After you've soaked all this down with a good solvent, you just put it down into here and now you can twist it and it will start scraping carbon off of here as well as on the neck up in here. So I love this little tool. It's super affordable and it's probably one of the best purchases I made in a long time. And then next up, I really love using these Otis brushes, or it doesn't matter where you get them. I just prefer getting these hard plastic bristles instead of using steel or copper. The copper I find tends to be too soft. The steel is too abrasive, but this hard plastic, you can just really get it into these little fine spots, like on your firing pin here. And let me see if I can get something off. And so here you can see on this side, there's less carbon than on this side. It's not a complete cleaning, but you guys get the gist of it. Let me know if you guys have any questions down in the comments section. I'd love to hear your feedback. Let me know if I missed anything or if there's anything else you guys would like to know, and I'll do my best to get a video out for you. But until next time, guys, I love you, and you guys stay sexy.